Here to mark the opening of Enrico Muratori's Promemoria exhibition. I just thought I'd make some introductory remarks. I am from ICANN, International Campaign to Abolish Nuclear Weapons. My name's Alistair Burnett. I'm here with my boss, Melissa, who will be speaking in a moment. Just wanted to sort of outline the context of our involvement with Enrico's work. We've been collaborating with Enrico for a few years now, since we supported him to get some of his works from Promemoria displayed on the big screens in Times Square in New York, which was quite exciting evening, wasn't it? And we watched the project grow and flourish with more artworks, the book that's here on the table, the music and the video, which we'll be seeing in a moment. And we really value how art and artists can reach audiences in a way the written word, the spoken word, can't. And Enrico chose today, because tomorrow the UN's Disarmament Week kicks off, which it has every year, dedicated to raising awareness of the need for all countries to disarm with a particular focus on nuclear weapons. And if we needed reminding of the threat, both NATO and Russia this week have been carrying out exercises in Europe practicing how to use their nuclear weapons. They're not their annual scheduled exercises, they do it every year, but it's just a reminder they did it in the same week. Well, NATO started the beginning of last week, but continuing this week, and Russia did theirs this week. So we need that reminder, it's there. This year, obviously, is the 80th anniversary of the founding of the UN, the United Nations. The General Assembly has a body called the First Committee that's devoted to disarmament, meets every October. It's a meeting as we speak now. So all the countries are there to consider the state of play with disarmament. And disarmament was actually the subject of the first meeting of the General Assembly, which is why what's happening in New York now is called First Committee. It's a salutary reminder that the first ever resolution of the General Assembly was actually for the abolition of nuclear weapons. That was in 1946. So it's also 80 years, obviously, since the invention and the first use of nuclear weapons by the US in New Mexico, and then obviously against Hiroshima and Nagasaki, with the horrendous consequences for the hundreds of thousands of people who were under the mushroom cloud. We always see the picture of the mushroom cloud. We'd see less of what was happening when that mushroom cloud was billowing up underneath. So ICANN's message this year is that 80 years of harm is enough, and it's time these weapons were eliminated before they eliminate us. And that's also the message that Enrico wants to convey with Promemoria. So before I introduce speakers, will be some brief remarks. I just wanted to say, if any Swiss voters are here tonight, ICANN, with a group of civil society partners and religious organizations and political parties, is running a popular initiative to call a referendum to get the Federal Council of Switzerland to sign the treaty. Parliament voted for it in 2019. Switzerland was a key mover in the adoption of the treaty for the prohibition of nuclear weapons in 2017, but is yet to sign. So the federal government, if you're here, there's a leaflet. You need to be a Swiss voter to fill one of these in, but if you are, please do so. Anyway, on to more interesting things. I'd like to thank the Deputy Permanent Representative of Austria to the UN here in Geneva, Christoph Wieland, who is joining us here. He'll be speaking in a moment. We're followed by the Executive Director of ICANN, Melissa Park, and of course, Enrico himself. So after they've spoken, we can circulate, help ourselves to wine and snacks, and talk about the works in front of us. But first, I'd like to ask Mr. Wieland to open proceedings.
Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, my name is Christoph Wieland. I'm the Deputy Permanent Representative from the Austrian Permanent Mission here in Geneva. And it is an honor for me to address you this evening on behalf of the Permanent Mission of Austria, especially during the Disarmament Week in Geneva, as was already mentioned. Tonight, we gather here not only to celebrate art, but also to reflect deeply and urgently on what it means to live under the shadow of nuclear weapons. It was already mentioned this August, we celebrated the 80th anniversary of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, where more than 200,000 lives were lost in moments that forever changed the course of humanity. And 8 decades later, there are still more than 12,000 nuclear warheads around, ready and capable of ending life in every second. For Austria, this is not only a theoretical debate, but it's a very urgent and real threat to our real existence on this planet. In 2023, we commissioned a study which had the title Understanding the Humanitarian Consequences and Risks of Nuclear Weapons with the University of York. And this study reminds us once again that why awareness must become action. It gives an overview over the latest research in the field of nuclear weapons and their impact, aiming to increase our understanding of the complex consequences and risks and putting diplomatic work on a solid, factual and scientifically backed basis. And this study concludes unequivocally that nuclear weapons use would be a catastrophe of unimaginable scale, one with cascading consequences that could lead to the collapse of human civilization. This risk, the scientists tell us, is never zero. And here I spotted one of these wonderful, nice pictures with the title In Control. The illusion of control is precisely that. It's an illusion. Nuclear weapons never do create security. On the contrary, they endanger our shared future. Austria has been long advocating for nuclear disarmament at the international level, and we continue to ring the alarm bell. We were one of the countries we were pushing for a treaty on the prohibition of nuclear weapons, in short TPNW. And as we speak now, the first committee, which is dealing with disarmament in New York, is ongoing, and we again will bring forward the Austrian-led resolution on the TPNW and also the humanitarian consequences of nuclear weapons. Both resolutions have been supported by the majority of member states in the past years, and underlining that it is in the interest of the very survival of humanity that nuclear weapons are never used again under any circumstances. And the only guarantee that this will happen, not again, is their total elimination. This is why coming together like we do tonight really matters. When art, science, and diplomacy meet in dialogue, each speaking a language of truth, emotion, and responsibility, we connect as human beings. Science gives us knowledge, diplomacy gives us some sort of structure and cooperation, and art gives us empathy. The power to feel what statistics alone can never ever convey. By now, we know that nuclear weapons affect us all and that we need action for a nuclear weapon-free world. And art plays such an important part and indispensable role in this regard by making us understand on a much deeper personal level what is at stake. Here in Geneva, we are in the privileged position to have a very rich microcosmos of experts from disarmament, environment, health, but also civil society actors and artists like Mr. Ambrosio, who we have the pleasure to welcome tonight and see his wonderful pictures. And this reminds us all that we have a moral, humanitarian, and environmental obligation to abolish nuclear weapons. Artists play a special role in this, and their courage to imagine peace helps us to see the invisible, the fears, the hopes, the shared humanity that connects us all beyond politics and beyond borders. And in that sense, I wish you a wonderful evening. Thank you.
I'm going to ask Melissa Park, who is the Executive Director of ICANN, to say a few words.
Good evening, everyone. Assalamu alaikum. Bienvenue. It's wonderful to be here at the official launch of Enrico's Promemoria exhibition in this 80th anniversary year of the invention and first uses of nuclear weapons. This collection started as a painting and has grown to what you see now, and a book and many other things. The book is entitled Promemoria, or Reminder, as is the whole exhibition, in which Enrico, as artist, activist, and human rights defender, has deployed his artwork as an explicit SOS to all of us to change course and prevent the end of the world as we know it. And given what is going on in the world right now, it feels appropriate that some of Enrico's artwork references George Orwell's Animal Farm. Enrico's use of beautiful animals, striking colours, and magical happenings reminds us of the urgency of the situation and what we stand to lose. Nuclear weapons are the only devices ever created by humans that have the capacity to destroy all complex life on Earth. Author Yuval Noah Harari talks about the power of human imagination to redirect our ingenuity from self-destruction to self-creation. Since the invention of nuclear weapons, writers, musicians, and artists have used their talents to educate, to protest, and to inspire others to action to achieve a world without nuclear weapons. And over the years, ICANN has worked with artists to draw the world's attention to the reality of nuclear weapons and the urgency of their abolition. And as Alistair mentioned, in 2023, we collaborated with Enrico to have a projection of radioactive beasts in Times Square in New York. And last year, together with the City of Geneva and the International Museum of the Red Cross and Red Crescent, we launched an exhibit at the museum of a sculpture of Shinichi's tricycle. Shinichi was a 3-year-old boy in Hiroshima, riding his tricycle when the US nuclear bomb struck that city 80 years ago. He died from his injuries that same day and was buried in the backyard with his tricycle. Many years later, the family decided to move Shinichi's remains to a family grave, and they donated his tricycle to the Hiroshima Peace Museum, where it has come to symbolise the enormous suffering of children in war, past, present and future, and the ever-present danger of nuclear weapons. And so ICANN worked with US and Japanese artists to create a sculpture of Shinichi's tricycle to be permanently exhibited here in the international humanitarian capital of Geneva, in the Red Cross Museum. And we've also worked with Mexico-based artists against the bomb, including on a poster exhibition at the Parc des Bastions in August. But talking about Shinichi's sculpture reminded me of a little story I just wanted to mention. A long time ago, more than 20 years ago, I worked with UNRWA in Gaza for 2.5 years as part of my UN career. And I remember attending a Hiroshima and Nagasaki commemoration ceremony down at the Gaza harbour, early one August evening. And there were hundreds of Palestinian children who'd made little paper boats with candles in them. And they carefully lit the candles and set the boats afloat on the water. And it was extraordinarily beautiful, Gaza harbour. And very moving to think that here were children who were themselves being subjected to bombing on a regular basis, remembering children in another time and place who'd also been bombed. And when I visited Hiroshima and Nagasaki for the first time last year to meet with the elderly hibakusha, now in their 80s and 90s, I realised that they were children at the times of the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombings. And these were the same children being remembered by the children of Gaza many years earlier. And those same hibakusha were leading nightly rallies in support of the people of Gaza. And they did that because they understood that these issues are connected across space and time. That it's the same ways of thinking that justify nuclear weapons, that justify genocide, that justify facilitating a genocide. And I think art and inspired thinking is what can help us to change those very dangerous ways of thinking that are doing so much harm in this world. And when I think of the culture that I saw in Gaza, and the Japanese culture I saw in Japan, and all of that destroyed today and back then. And I think about the culture that's represented in this beautiful building, in this beautiful association here. That is what we have to lose. Many people think, well, I'm only one person, what can I do? Well, the antidote to a sense of helplessness is action. Since nuclear weapons will destroy everything and everyone we love, nuclear weapons are everyone's business. We all have a right to speak about this. It's both our right and our responsibility, whatever our background, skills and resources, to take some action, no matter how small, to put an end to nuclear weapons. And so that could be speaking to your elected officials about the TPNW, as Alistair mentioned, and as Alistair said, that if you are Swiss, please sign the popular initiative. We've only got a few weeks left to get it in, to have Switzerland join the TPNW. You can speak to your banks and pension funds about their ethical investment policies and demand they divest from nuclear weapons. You could be joining or donating to a campaign like ours. You could be posting on social media, creating art, as Enrico has done. You are limited only by your imagination, and that is no limit at all. Albert Einstein said he never made a single one of his scientific discoveries through a process of rational thinking. It was all insight and imagination. The Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons is an example of that creative thinking, of seeing differently how we can choose another path. We don't have to go down this path of increasing confrontation, militarisation and proliferation. We can actually choose a different path of dialogue, diplomacy and disarmament. Excuse me. And so what Einstein said is that the intuitive mind is a sacred gift and the rational mind is a faithful servant. And we have created a society that honours the servant and has forgotten the gift. Well, I think Enrico's beautiful works show that indeed we have not forgotten the gift. Thank you, Enrico, for what you do to bring some beauty and some hope into this world. Thank you.
Now it leaves me to introduce the man we're all here to celebrate and his work. So he's going to tell us a bit more about that and his association.
So, merci à tous. Je vais parler français pour changer. Merci pour être venus par ce temps horrible de ce soir, mais c'est une chose importante que nous essayons de faire ici avec ICANN. Je remercie Melissa pour le soutien et Alistair qui m'a soutenu concrètement depuis 3 ans pour tout ce travail. Et je remercie Monsieur l'ambassadeur Wieland, s'il est toujours là, mais je pense qu'il est déjà parti. En tout cas, merci à tous pour être là. Vous trouvez ici surtout les travaux des dernières 3 années, donc des bêtes radioactives que vous trouvez dans la petite salle jusqu'aux bêtes heureuses, parce que l'histoire se termine bien dans mon conte. Et nous espérons que ça va bien se terminer dans la réalité. En tout cas, nous sommes ici aussi pour présenter ce livre, vous le voyez, qui parle de cette histoire et qui se termine bien, mais aussi avec quelques points d'interrogation. Je vous invite à parcourir l'ensemble des peintures dans l'ordre de la numérotation parce qu'il y a toute une histoire qui est racontée. À l'issue, vous en saurez un peu plus sur ce qui se trouve dans le livre et peut-être aussi vous aurez un peu plus de sentiments par rapport au risque que nous courons en ce moment vu cette situation internationale toujours très troublée à laquelle les personnalités qui ont parlé ont déjà fait abondamment référence. Mais nous sommes ici surtout parce que nous voudrions changer les couleurs du monde. C'est pour cela qu'avec des amis genevois que vous voyez dans cette salle, parce qu'ils ont le même t-shirt que moi, nous avons créé une association qui s'appelle Colorier l'avenir, par laquelle nous espérons pouvoir avoir un monde un peu moins gris, un peu moins noir et un peu plus beau et lumineux, avec des belles couleurs qui puissent à nous encourager à la vie et à l'espoir. Comme on a beaucoup parlé, je ne veux pas parler trop longtemps, mais en tout cas, vous trouvez ici des dépliants, vous trouvez ici ma carte de visite, comme ça vous pourrez aller sur le site, regarder un peu. Je voulais juste dire que j'espère qu'il y ait, je sais qu'il y a, parce que j'en ai vu certains, mais qu'il y ait beaucoup d'artistes dans la salle. J'ai invité un peu tous les artistes que je connais, et certains sont là. Et l'année prochaine, le but sera d'organiser une collective, pas seulement ma propre exposition avec mes peintures sur la guerre, sur la paix, sur le nucléaire, mais essayer de mettre ensemble un groupe d'artistes genevois, suisses et au-delà, mais notamment résidant à Genève, parce que Genève, c'est la ville de la paix, la ville de la diplomatie, la ville de la conférence sur le désarmement, la ville des droits de l'homme, la ville des conventions de Genève, la ville du droit international humanitaire, du CICR. Donc autant de raisons pour lesquelles je pense qu'un mouvement pour la paix artistique peut et doit naître à partir de Genève. Donc l'année prochaine, j'espère qu'on se retrouvera ici avec vous tous, mais avec un grand nombre d'artistes genevois qui vont donc produire de l'art sur la paix. Le but étant de créer un groupe durable autour de l'association Colorier l'Avenir et qui nous permette donc d'avoir un groupe d'artistes qui poussent pour la paix, qui produisent du matériel, de l'art lié à la paix. Parce que honnêtement, il est difficile de parler de paix aujourd'hui, tant pour le commun des mortels que pour les artistes. On dirait que quelque part en haut, on ne veut pas trop qu'on parle de paix. Et pourtant, il y a un tableau derrière vous, j'espère que vous le verrez, qui représente beaucoup de moutons qui poussent à la guerre, alors qu'ils vont tous crever quand même. Je pense que c'est de l'intérêt de tout le monde de trouver des solutions avant que quelqu'un pousse sur le bouton. Voilà, c'est tout. Et je vous remercie pour être là. Et maintenant, on passe à la partie un peu plus artistique donc, de la soirée. Et nous avons d'abord une vidéo. On va vous montrer une vidéo parce que nous avons fait une chanson avec Ican et avec Emmanuel qui est quelque part derrière. Vous le verrez tout à l'heure, il est là. Tout à l'heure, qui va jouer aussi parce qu'il va y avoir ensuite deux acteurs, deux jeunes acteurs, Inès et Somchal, qui vont lire la fable et des poèmes contre la guerre par des grands poètes, pas par moi. Et la fable, je l'ai écrite, mais les poèmes ont été écrits par Boris Vian, Bertolt Brecht, Ungaretti et d'autres, Georges Brassens. Donc vous pourrez écouter. Et suite à ça, finalement, on pourra aller au moment que tout le monde attend, le cocktail.